let's drop the white pill on free speech. It's a hot topic. Let's break it down. What it is, what its purpose is, and why it's such a problem. So free speech is basically a measure to prevent tyranny, to prevent fundamentally, it's in the Constitution, to keep the country free from tyranny, along with many other things, many of the pillars of liberal democracies like free press and so on. And free speech is one of them. And it's a very powerful one. Because when tyrants and bad people start getting into power, they do bad things and they pretend it's good. So free speech is this ability to actually open up this discussion and expose them for what they're doing. And when they are exposed, they start to lose power because people see beyond the propaganda. And it is basically, on its most fundamental level, a measure against tyranny in society. And it's quite an effective one because most people want to live good, meaningful lives and let others live good, meaningful lives. And when they see the kind of things that tyrants in power are actually doing, people who want to centralize power and control things and control what people think, it's just a very powerful measure that keeps us free. And you can know this by looking at all of the countries that have tyranny, communism, theocracy, foreign rule, dictatorships, and so on. They absolutely oppress free speech for this particular reason, because it just totally interrupts their ability to have power over people. And that's why it is enshrined, and we love it in the free world, in liberal democracies, in the best countries in the world, liberal democracies, and I mean that empirically. So that's what free speech does. It keeps us free. It does many other good things as well. For example, we know that when we start to suppress free speech, terrible things can happen in society. And we certainly know that free speech definitely keeps children safer. And when we prevent people talking about stuff that they're concerned about, and whatever context that is. So it certainly is a protective factor for children as well. And so it's very important, very healthy. It is vital, for a healthy, free country like all these wonderful, prosperous and safe liberal democracies that we have the fortune of living in. Although they're under challenge at the moment, and free speech is under challenge for the reason that tyranny is trying to rise. So free speech is really essential and a great thing. It keeps us free, protects us from being ruled over by terrible people. And again, we know this because if you look at other countries, suppressing free speech is essential. So that is why free speech is essential. And we must, if you like your freedom, if you like your happiness, if you like your safety, if you don't want to be ruled over by some tyrannical regime, you must hold on to it. And even if you look at the regimes that are in power now, the kind of stuff they're trying to hide is absolutely abhorrent. And free speech is one of the reasons we begin to discover it and begin to undermine it. And the thing is, when the masses see what's actually going on, they really don't like it because the vast majority of people are good. So we must really fight to protect it, enshrine it, let nothing take it from us. It's so important. And free speech is really the right to people to speak their mind. And it is not about whatever that might be. And the truth is, free speech is also dangerous. People can say terrible things. They can say harmful things. They can say misleading things. People can get confused, say hateful things. But the best cure for hate speech is free speech. If people are saying hateful things, we'll bring it out in the open, talk about it. What are the facts? Let's debate this. Let's discuss this fully. So free speech can be dangerous. So first of all, we must keep free speech. If we want to stay free, it is absolutely essential. We can see the good it does. We can see those who seek to tell us the truth. And when we can protect those and let them say things that we might initially consider offensive and hard to hear, but maybe then as the years roll by, we realize, oh my gosh, they were speaking the truth all along. And that's why it's important to let people say things like it's the freedom of people to say things that you disagree with, to say things that you might find unpleasant to listen to. That's what free speech is. And it serves this great function of keeping society much healthier and protecting us from tyranny and protecting a lot of people. So we certainly must enshrine it and protect it and never let anybody take it from us. But then we also got to admit it can be harmful, it can be misleading, it can be detrimental. People can misuse it, people can use it with poor intent and so on. So we must protect ourselves from that. And we do that culturally. As I say, free speech is the best antidote to the problems of free speech. So we engage in conversation and dialogue. We look into the facts and fully. We have critical minds as citizens. And we culturally say, you know what, oftentimes in free speech is at its best, we kind of make a few rules. We're going to be respectful. We don't have to respect ideas or ideologies, but we will respect people, and we can have good cultural traditions that help us really use free speech in a positive way. And when people don't, we can be tolerant and not reactive and appreciate, okay, that it's best that they should speak their mind openly so that we can review and discuss what they're saying. Then we should suppress their speech, and it would kind of be an underground, hidden kind of agenda. So actually having them air it openly is actually a good thing, and letting them fully air it openly so it can be fully discussed and explored. And even if it's difficult, and it can be harmful, a certain degree of harm we have to just tolerate because it's worth it, and do our best to mitigate it, and then there is so in liberal democracies, the law is not there to tell us how to live our lives, right? That is tyranny. When liberal democracies start creating laws, legislating how we should live, it's not going to work out good. It's tyranny. We're here to be free and live our lives, and as citizens be constructive and obey the law and do all these good things. And we must embrace citizenship in order for liberal democracy to work and take responsibility for that, which is something we might need to review in many liberal democracies and awaken to that reality. But the law is there to curb the worst excesses of what can happen in a liberal democracy. Like in other countries, the law is there to apply the will of the overlords, the rulers, the state. You are a subject of the state. You're not a citizen. The law is there, decided by who's ever ruling. This is what the people will do. But not in liberal democracies. It is simply there to limit the most extreme things that can happen. Otherwise, leave people alone. Let them freely do what they want. Only interfere with people when they're breaking the law, and don't create laws to like regulate human behavior and what's okay for us to say and think and do and all that kind of stuff. Create laws that mitigate the worst things that can happen. So the worst parts of free speech will be stuff that a reasonable person would say what you said would cause somebody else to go and do harm, or would cause a group of people to go and do harm, or was slander or libel. And the laws are all very reasonable, and the standard is very high. Like it's not that it's easy to cross this line. You really have to be working hard to cross it. You can say quite a lot of things because in liberal democracies, we try to keep people the most freedom, and the law is just there to try and really prevent the worst things of free speech. Not to when the law starts getting around to moderate it, to say what's okay to say, and not to say, well, that's kind of the end of free speech, and that's just tyranny, and that's a terrible thing, because we all know that never works out well when just a few people get to rule over the many. So that's how we manage free speech. That's how we manage the difficulty of it. And of course, tyrannists are great. They've got great tricks, and they say, oh, free speech is terrible, it does terrible things. We can't be letting people do this and that. We need to curtail it. And it is difficult, it is hard, but curtailing it is far worse. When we start curtailing free speech, we lose our right to talk about what matters. It means bad people can get away with doing very bad things, and they feel protected, and they will do worse things, So they just use that game sometimes to say free speech is a bad thing. We got to really legislate and curtail it and get rid of it. And that's, so anybody who's saying that is a tyrannist, and that's bad, whether that's a communist, whether that's a liberal democracy. I mean, illiberal, not liberal, illiberal, or whatever, dictatorship or foreign rule. They just can't wait to get rid of free speech because it's just such a problem for them, because it's exactly what it's supposed to be. So that's free speech. Look, if you like your freedom, if you like liberal democracy, if you believe in liberal democracy like I do, and if you look at the empirical data of how great liberal democracies are for people, if you enjoy being free, safe, prosperous, have an opportunity, and so on, living in the best countries in the world, they're all liberal democracies pretty much, then you need to just protect the pillars of a liberal democracy. And there's several of them, and one of the most fundamental ones is free speech. It protects us from tyranny. Don't let anybody confuse you, don't let anybody take it away. Just enshrine it. And it is the right for people to say things that you fundamentally object to, that you fundamentally think are wrong. Some things you might think are even quite disgusting and harmful and bad. It is the right to let people say that, because then there is no centralized authority saying what's okay and not okay to say, because that would quickly get corrupted, because we know there's predators out there, organizational predators. So, and we tolerate this because we know that we're all much better off in the long run having this, because oftentimes some of these voices that are initially castigated as being terrible and bad, turns out they were really just people speaking truth to power, and they were good people, and they were right. And sometimes it turns out they were wrong. And that's the process of liberal democracies. We debate, we discuss, we review, we look, we analyze as citizens, we get the data, we information, and so on. And we kind of find a better path. And we do. And And that's the beauty of liberal democracies. They can go astray, and free speech can go astray. But the beauty is we self-correct. We the beauty of a liberal democracy is that it can self-criticize. Like, communism, theocracy, they cannot those nations cannot criticize themselves. It's kind of forbidden. It is not allowed. Whereas liberal democracies can, and we need to be grateful of that and appreciate. That's one of the reasons that we can self-correct, is we can have a genuine look at what's going on. So free speech is wonderful. It's difficult, it's challenging, and I think we must enshrine it, protect it, and love it, and love the benefit that it brings. And we must also realize, we must culturally, let's use it responsibly. Let's use it intelligently. So some people who are using it maliciously and have no integrity, let's have the intelligence to look at that and say their argument doesn't make sense. They're just stirring emotions. They're not really talking about what specifically their concerns are, and demagoguery and all that stuff. And we have to be good citizens and understand how to interpret and critically analyze things, so free speech can do its best. And we need to appreciate that the best antidote to hateful speech is free speech. And honestly, sometimes what is considered hateful speech turns out to be actually really, really accurate, correct, good, and just and fair speech, because some things are should be hated, and we should have hate for certain vile acts that go on, and we need to discuss and sort those out. So culturally, our traditions, how we engage in free speech, the agreements we make about how we want to have our debates and our discussions, the idea that I could speak with somebody from a different political perspective and appreciate their perspective, try to learn from their perspective, and they would be open to me criticizing, and they criticize mine. We have a good conversation about that, and have emotions, But afterwards, let's have a cup of tea and let's talk about soccer, Let's talk about something else. Let's go for a pint, This is the essence of free speech, that we can hate an idea because we really don't like it, or an ideology, but we don't go around hating people. And that's another good practice for free speech. And sometimes the thing we hated once, after a few years, we discover, oh my gosh, actually, I was totally wrong. And that's the beauty of it as well. And over time, we do tend to get to better places, because even though some of the worst voices can speak out, really, if you have free speech, the worst voices ultimately get unveiled and discovered, and actually the wisest, most sensible voices will rise to the top. Because for those worst voices, they actually need the oppression of free speech. And you see that all the time in some of these terrible ideologies go out of their way to oppress free speech, because free speech totally starts taking apart what they're saying. And you know that when somebody is against free speech, their ideology is probably highly questionable, because it doesn't stand up to the test of liberal democracies or free speech and investigation and discussion. And we must appreciate that free speech requires the people who are engaging with it and discussing it to have integrity. And if somebody doesn't have integrity and they're just being manipulative, we need to have the intelligence to be able to understand that and say, this, I don't really care what they say, because I listen to them, they can say it, but I can clearly see they're not having this discussion in good faith. And then, of course, we need to appreciate the law is not there to legislate on free speech and how we can and cannot talk, because that would be tyranny. It's just there to take care of the most extremes of that. That if somebody was really, we could say there was a very high likelihood that they actually caused the violence because of what they said, or it was really genuinely insightful, that actually caused actual violence, and so on. It's a high bar, and it needs to be. Because otherwise the tyrannists will just keep lowering that bar until really you have no free speech left. And that's obviously something the game they play too. So that is the white pill, the red pill too, on understanding free speech, why it's important, what it does, what its function is, and the white pill, how we should relate to it as citizens and understand its function, and how we should seek to moderate the worst aspects of it through realizing free speech is the antidote to hate speech, through realizing we should use our intelligence to understand what other people are saying, and if they don't have good faith, to appreciate that. It's not a good faith argument they're making if they're just playing games, to understand that. We should have the ability to have traditions and cultures that help us really use free speech in a positive way, and so on. And also we should appreciate the place of the law in regard to free speech, and it is a high bar that it should ever interfere with what somebody wants to say or does not want to say. And it is certainly not that if somebody's saying something that another person says offensive, the law needs to have nothing to do with that. That's just going into tyranny, and somebody deciding what other people can and cannot say, and that's just opening the door for tyranny. And tyrannists want that, people foreign powers that want to do stuff and rule over people, and there's lots of these tyrannical powers seeking to rise, and you can know straight away because they all hate free speech. So I hope you got something out of that. I think it's a hot topic, but I think hopefully I brought some clarity to it. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Love to hear from what your thoughts are, and love to discuss it further, because that is the essence of free speech, is discussion and inquiry, and sometimes robust debate. That's the essence of it all.